Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Galindo. Welcome to another Autodesk tutorial. Today, rather than looking at Inventor, we're looking at a new program called Showcase, which is our virtual rendering system. So, to start with, you'll notice here I've got my vehicle all fully assembled and constrained. I've got a vehicle with a default material on it here, and my wheels, though, if you'll notice, have some materials already applied to them. Now, to start with, make sure this is saved. I've renamed mine the render assembly because that's what it's for. I'm then going to go down to my search, the Windows bar, and type in show for Showcase and click enter once it is appeared at the top. Showcase takes a little while to load, and initially I'm going to straight away open up a file, so follow the process to do that. This is because it has to render and start to conform our files to the Showcase system, so it kind of has to compress and then decompress them, and that takes a little bit of time. So now that it is loaded, I'm going to click on Open File, Your File, select my render assembly, and it's going to start to convert that, and you can see that happening down the bottom there. Let's have a look at the environment we're in, because it's quite new. Clicking the top arrow here allows us to look at the major options at the top. We've got our regular view cube, we've got our regular orientation things with some changes, view whole document, orbit, similar tools such as that. Down the bottom are the ones we're going to be using mainly, such as the lighting environments and background, adjusting the lighting, visual styles, the look, and then publishing. So, once this is loaded, which does take a little bit of time, the first thing we've got to do is check our appearance. This is done by selecting the look, or the the look option, and then selecting materials. It'll pop this options up in here, and it'll tell us what materials we have in our scene. That's what it's imported from our materials from Inventor. And then the libraries which we can use to find more materials. For example, I'm going to want to import white, and so I've typed in white to the filter. I'm going to use the Showcase materials because they're the ones I find best. You can see now our car's been imported. I'm going to go to car paint because we've got a vehicle here, don't we? I'm going to select car white, and it's now appeared in the scene materials. Selecting the body of my vehicle, which is the one that didn't have a material, it was called default. I'm going to right click on white and go assign to selection, and now it's been assigned to that selection. Alright, there is white metallic there you can explore as well. Now that's finished, so I'm going to close that, and I'd like to open now the shots option. The shots automatically create some standard views of our vehicle or object, the 3/4 view, the default view, and then it starts to do some animations such as the track left view, which I find quite interesting. You can explore how to create those later on. We just want a quick render for now. Now I'm going to click the default view, and then I'm going to zoom in ever so slightly because I like it to be pretty much full framed into my screen here, maybe slightly out about there. I am now going to go to the lighting environment and background and select the correct environment. For this, I'm going to select Photo Studio. Just changes it slightly, gives me a background, which you can see if you pan over, and a horizon, but I'm not going to do that right now. And then I'm going to adjust the lighting because I don't want the shadows to be pointing towards me, and for the most part they're not, but they're kind of going forwards, and I want them to be going backwards. So I'm going to click Light here. See the option here, click and drag anywhere to move the environment light. Control click to place the highlight. I'm not going to control click, I'm just going to drag on the ground and drag the shadows. I kind of went a bit too far left there. You can see now they're kind of more underneath. I want them to be a bit more projected backwards, like so. Now I'm pulling towards me a bit like that, so you can see they're kind of pointing away from the front of my vehicle. The next thing we need to do is actually check our settings for rendering. To do this, we need to go to the ray tracing options. Now the ray tracing options are under appearance, and you can see the shortcut there as Y. Selecting Y, it comes up down the bottom. Selecting the settings here enables us to look at the settings. Now if you want a really high quality option for your system, you're going to have to change this a little bit. However, I'm going to leave it at just 6 render levels. You can either do this forever, so it will keep rendering more and more fine quality each time. 6 render levels is kind of like standard if you want it to be on a document. If you wanted this to be on a big poster, you'd be doing something like 20, so you have to kind of think about that and experiment a bit. Now, for now I'm going to leave that as okay, and to switch to the ray tracing rather than the regular view we've got here, we click R, and it starts to render. You see it just popped up with enable ray tracing. I'm just going to close the options out here. You can now see that the progress bar is started. It'll give us a percentage, it'll render to certain levels, and the scope of the individual pixels it's trying to accomplish some physics calculations on to make this look realistic is scaling down, and you can see that is becoming a nicer and nicer image as we watch it. So I'm going to let this render for a little while, and I'll pause and come back when it's a little bit further along, and we'll have a look at it then. Each level, for example, takes a little bit longer to render, so it can take a long time if you increase the number too far. Once you've done that though, we're just going to save it, so let's come back in a second. Welcome back everyone to our rendering progress. You can see we're nearly done here. We'll render level 5 at 86%. I just wanted to quickly show you something to do with computing. I'm looking at the task manager here and the performance of the computer, and this is the CPU, the central processing unit of this machine. It is running near to 100% currently. It is trying to render this as fast as possible with as much accuracy as possible for us. Now, normally when you use a computer, you'd be using less than 30% of its CPU, except for peak times when you just launch a new program or similar. You can see also with my memory, it's at about 73%, so I'm getting close to the capacity for this machine to be able to render this. Just as an interesting point, there are farms, literally what we could call a farm, dedicated to rendering. And if you think about it, if we thought about animation and how long it might take to make a single image for an animated movie that has to be put into such a large screen, it's quite an interesting concept that we have to, we've created as human beings and as civilization this process where we render things so they look more realistic. Okay, so you can see that it's done now, and it looks pretty good. If I zoomed in on this as an image and stuff, yes, it would get fuzzy eventually. You can see it's not that sharp on the edges. The longer I would have left this, the better it would have been. But at this current point, it's a great example, and obviously you can save much higher quality renders yourselves. So I'm now going to click save. I'm going to call this test 3 because it's not indeed the first one I did. And I'm then going to see if I can find that file to show you what it looks like. There it is there. And double clicking on it, did not want it to open. There we go. Alright, and you can see we've got a file there with our vehicle, a JPEG, so we can easily format this and put this into a vehicle. And you can see what I mean about zooming in. You don't get a very good look. That's all to do with the settings. You do more the more time spent on it, the finer it will look. And if you look at my first test and I zoom in on this one, you'll notice that it's incredibly pixelated when I get close. So you can see the difference there already. Alright, thank you for watching. That was a Autodesk tutorial for Showcase and how to render your F1 cars. Well done.